Every single person who has ever tried to solve their electricity bill has asked the wrong question. They asked, how do I pay less? They looked at solar. They looked at wind. They looked at efficiency. They switched providers. They argued with customer service. They did everything except ask the one question that makes all of those other questions completely irrelevant. The question is not, how do I pay less for electricity? The question is, why am I paying for something the ground produces for free? That question leads somewhere that the entire energy industry has spent 180 years and an incalculable amount of money making sure felt too fringe, too complicated, too small to be worth your attention. It is not fringe. It is electrochemistry. It is documented history. And it is sitting 6 inches underneath your feet right now, waiting for 2 pieces of scrap metal and someone finally asking the right question. Today you asked it, and what happens in the next 8 minutes is going to make every other answer you ever got feel like a deliberate distraction. In 1841, a clockmaker in Scotland named Alexander Bain, not a scientist, just an ordinary working man, pushed an iron rod into the ground, pushed a zinc rod in beside it, connected them with a wire, and powered a clock. No fuel, no battery, no monthly payment to anyone. Just 2 metals and the earth. Within a decade, telegraph operators across America were discovering that their underground lines were carrying currents nobody had sent. The ground itself was generating them. Entire stations began running off earth batteries, copper and zinc plates buried in moist soil producing enough voltage to transmit messages across hundreds of miles of real operational line. Documented. Published. Used. And then the research stopped. No failure was reported. No flaw was discovered. The papers simply ceased across every major institution simultaneously. By the time Edison and Westinghouse were dividing up the American electrical market, earth battery technology had vanished from the conversation completely. Science does not abandon a working technology. Money does. The men building the electrical grid understood immediately that a power source living in your backyard, requiring no fuel and accepting no meter, was not a competitor. It was the end of their entire business model. So it did not get scaled. It got buried. And every working-class family has been paying for that decision every single month since. Here is the science, and it is simpler than anyone who profits from your confusion wants you to know. Every battery ever built operates on the same 3-part principle. You need a metal that releases electrons, called the anode. You need a metal that collects electrons, called the cathode. And you need a medium between them that allows charged particles called ions to move from one metal to the other, called the electrolyte. In your phone battery, the electrolyte is a chemical gel manufactured in a factory and sold to you indirectly through the cost of every device you own. In an earth battery, the electrolyte is the soil. The moisture in the ground carries the ions. The dissolved minerals in the soil amplify how many ions are available to move. And the billions of microorganisms living in healthy soil add an additional biological layer of electron transfer that researchers in the field of microbial fuel cells have been documenting for decades outside the mainstream. The Earth is not just dirt. It is a continuous living electrochemical system that has been generating electrical current since long before the first human being stood on it. We are not creating electricity from nothing. We are doing exactly what the utility company does, finding a source of electron movement and putting a wire across it. The only difference is that their source requires a massive centralized plant, decades of infrastructure investment, and a monthly bill sent to your address. Yours requires a nail, a piece of copper, and the ground under your feet that you already own. 2 things. First, a galvanized nail, your anode, the electron giver. It will corrode slowly as it works. That is not a flaw. That is the process. Second, a copper pipe or stripped copper wire, your cathode, the collector. Stable, long-lasting, does not fight the soil. Before either of them goes into the ground, pour salt water into the insertion points. That single step takes your output from a whisper to something a multimeter cannot ignore. Salt water is the detail every other explanation skips. Do not skip it. Now, here is the part you actually came for. This is the exact step-by-step method. Do this in your backyard today, and you will have measurable electricity running from the ground before the sun goes down. Push your galvanized nail and your copper into moist, salt-treated soil, 6 to 8 inches deep, 6 inches apart. Now connect them with wire to a multimeter set to DC voltage. Look at that number. That is real electrochemical current coming out of 2 pieces of scrap metal and dirt. Not a trick, not interference, real electricity. A single cell gives you somewhere between 0.4 and 1.2 volts depending on your soil, your metals, and your moisture level. Not enough to run anything meaningful on its own, but that is not the point yet. The point is, you just proved the source is real. Now here is where it gets serious. The cell is not the invention. The array is. Take a second identical cell and connect it in series, positive terminal of cell 1 to the negative terminal of cell 2. Your voltage doubles instantly. Add a third and it triples. 10 cells connected this way, and buried in salt-treated soil gives you 4 to 8 volts of sustained DC current from nothing but dirt and salvaged metal. Now, connect your lead across the array output and watch it glow. Sit with that for a second. One afternoon, trash materials, free electricity glowing in front of you. Larger plates buried deeper in consistently moist soil produce proportionally more current. Researchers outside mainstream funding have documented arrays powerful enough to run full off-grid lighting systems and charging setups indefinitely. The utility industry does not need this to be illegal. They only need you to look at that lead and decide it is too small to matter. The person who does not make that mistake, the one who starts calculating plate size and array configuration instead, is the person who stops being their customer forever. Multiply that person by millions of households sitting above ground that has been generating free current this entire time, and you understand exactly why this never made it into your textbook. Your biggest silent killer is uneven moisture. One dry cell drags your entire array down. Fix it by packing shredded cardboard or sawdust mixed with salt water tightly around each electrode before burial. It holds moisture for days and keeps your output stable long after a plain soil build is already faded. Also bury every electrode pair at the exact same depth. A 2-inch difference between cells is enough to make one your weakest link and collapse your whole system. 4 extra minutes of measurement protects weeks of output. And a retired utility engineer, 31 years inside one of the largest power providers on this continent, sent me 6 words from an account that deleted itself 1 hour later. Not technical words, not about moisture or depth. Just 6 words that reframe everything you just built. He said, "They know it works. That is why."